June 14, 1943. Before sunrise, cold wind moved across the rail bed east of Smolensk. Snow hid the iron lines that carried German supplies toward the front. Private Viktor Kuznetsov stood with frost stiff on his coat. His breath rose in short clouds. He watched empty tracks stretching between dark pines. He knew trains came through at dawn. Each train carried shells, fuel, bread, and repair parts. Each train reached the German lines without real delay. Soviet platoons starved for ammunition. Men froze in dugouts waiting for coats and boots that never arrived. Command sent sabotage teams to blow lines with explosives, but guards spotted them. Mines failed when fuses froze. Night patrols used dogs that sniffed out charges. Every attempt cost men who could not be replaced. Victor had seen 3 crews die for one broken rail. He carried a different idea made from steel and memory. Before the war he tore old hulls apart in Murmansk. He cut iron plates with torches. He tested weight against leverage. He snapped rivets with hammers. He knew how metal failed under stress. He believed a locomotive could be stopped without powder. A tool could force wheels to climb their own track and break apart. In the yard he once saw an anchor spike tear through mooring timber like paper. He never forgot that sound. When supply raids failed again and again he thought of that spike. He studied train wheels up close whenever patrols passed. He traced their curve in frost with a gloved finger. He measured distance between flange and rail. He drew sketches in the dirt. Most laughed. They called him the shipyard dreamer. They said war ran on TNT, not rust. He answered only with work. He searched scrap piles beside a frozen siding. He found broken track plates, bent bolts, anchor chain from an abandoned flat car, and a section of twisted I-beam. He dragged metal across snow. He built a field forge with bricks and diesel. He hammered steel into teeth. Sparks lit the night. Smoke mixed with cold air and turned his eyes red. He shaped 4 curved prongs like claws. He welded them to a base plate with cross braces of chain. The weight took 3 men to move. Officers saw the rough welds and crude shape. They banned it as unapproved equipment. They said only explosives counted as sabotage. They told him to stop. He did not stop. He built a second trap and a third. His squad helped. They respected effort more than rules. They lost friends to hunger and frostbite. They wanted results. They hauled scrap through knee-deep snow and swore at frozen bolts. They filed teeth until they shone dull gray. They dug ballast loose with picks. They hid the trap under a thin crust of snow. Victor placed teeth where wheels would drop with full force. He tested alignment 3 times. He brushed snow smooth again. His hands bled through gloves. Hours passed. Wind hissed through trees. Frost thickened on rifles and mustaches. The men waited behind birch trunks. At last they heard a hum. It grew into a steady grind. The rail began to sing under weight. A long train approached, engines smoking and headlamps cutting pale lines through drizzle. Flat cars carried barrels strapped with wire. A guard car followed with men in goggles. Machine guns sat mounted on both sides. The squad held breath. Boots pressed into crusted snow. Victor raised one hand for silence. The locomotive rolled across the hidden steel. At first there was only a deep groan. Then a harsh scream of iron on iron. The lead axle jerked upward. Wheel flanges struck the first tooth. Steel tore open. Sparks flew like stars. The engine lurched sideways. Cars buckled. Couplings snapped. Barrels flew into the air and burst. Diesel spilled across white ground. 2 more cars tipped and dragged others with them. Snow rose like smoke. Timber splinters drove into bark. German guards jumped, shouting. Rifles clattered across ice. A second axle caught and ripped free. Cars climbed the rail and tumbled down the embankment. Flames burst from ruptured fuel drums. Black smoke spread low over drifts. Victor watched without blinking. His trap had done what doctrine failed to do. His men advanced with rifles. They fired short bursts to keep guards pinned. They reached smashed crates of bread and medical packets. They carried blankets and boots. They found tins of morphine and heating tablets. They worked fast. Repair teams would come by noon. Victor ordered the squad to mask tracks. They used pine boughs to sweep prints. They covered scrap with tarps. They moved salvage toward forest thickets. When they reached shelter they rested. They tore bread and passed it around. Their breath warmed frozen fingers. Victor cleaned his hands with snow. Cuts stung but he felt clear inside. He wrote a report by lantern light. His words stayed plain. One rusted trap derailed a German supply train. Supplies captured. No saboteur losses. No explosives used. He asked permission to build more. He expected silence or anger. He received neither at first. 3 days later an engineer captain rode out. He stood over the twisted wreck and inspected axle shards. He studied teeth marks on steel wheels. He asked Victor how long construction took. Victor said 2 nights. He said 3 men. Scrap only. The captain frowned at crude welds, then nodded at the wreck. He granted approval. He ordered 20 more traps. He sent word to partisan cells through forest lines. Victor trained blacksmiths and line soldiers. He showed how to bend prongs with heat and hammer. He taught spacing for deep bite. He reduced build time with shorter braces. Rail sabotage changed by the week. Mines still froze but metal did not. Trains derailed again and again. Guards grew fearful of snow that looked smooth. Repair crews worked night shifts. German shells fell short when ammo ran thin. Casualties eased for Soviet infantry. Victor walked among units that once doubted him. Men saluted with honest eyes. He answered only with calm nods. He kept working. He returned often to the first wreck site. Rails still twisted like torn keel plates. Snow covered most debris but not all. He stared at broken wheels half buried near river stones. They reminded him that war could bend to human hands. He did not gloat. He did not forget fallen crews from earlier failures. He stood in silence where men bled for nothing. His trap had saved others from that fate. He lifted a shard of flange still sharp from impact. It cut his glove. Blood-marked snow. The color faded fast in cold wind. He walked back toward camp with steady steps. He planned new claws with lighter base weight. He sketched angles for faster bite. He kept notes in a small notebook. Each page held numbers and measurements. Not dreams. Only test and result. The squad watched him write by firelight. They saw a man shaped by steel and loss. He saw only the next train. He slept little that night. Distant artillery thudded in short bursts. Frost crept across tent canvas. He opened his eyes before dawn and listened for engines in dark. The cold felt like iron against skin. He rose and moved to the forge with metal in each hand. Sparks rose again. Work continued. June 21, 1943. Snow turned to wet slush as temperatures rose. Meltwater ran between sleepers and turned ballast dark. The rail line west of Vyazma carried heavier traffic. Germans pushed to move fuel and artillery before spring mud swallowed roads. Repair crews patrolled with dogs. Spotters watched tree lines through binoculars. Viktor Kuznetsov studied every change. He walked with engineers along embankments where ice broke in large sheets. He tapped rails with a hammer and listened for hollow tone. He watched sparks in the forge as his men shaped more claws. They worked without complaint. The memory of the first derailment stayed close to skin. Victor taught squads from neighboring regiments. He showed how to weld teeth to thick plates and how to drive anchor chain through bolt slots. He kept instructions simple. Eat, bend, brace. Cool slow under snow to reduce brittle snap. Men listened. They practiced in shifts. They cursed the weight but trusted the method. When they assembled the second batch, he sent them to 3 sectors along the line. One team placed a trap north of a river bridge. Another south of a fuel depot. A third near a junction used for medical evacuation. Mines often failed at bridges. Victor believed claws would hold fast under any load. The first team placed theirs under cloud cover. They worked by moonlight and hauled scrap through reeds. At dawn they heard the whistle. A train of supply wagons rolled slow over wet steel. The claws bit deep. The first 3 cars derailed and slid into river ice. Crates of grenades exploded in white spray. German patrols fired into trees but hit only trunks. The team pulled back with no losses. Reports reached headquarters by noon. Officers called the result unorthodox but undeniable. They demanded count. 2 locomotives disabled in 1 week. 5 cars destroyed. 600 shells lost to enemy inventory. Victor studied numbers like a machinist reads gauges. He wanted clean patterns. He wanted repeatable break. The second team set theirs south of the depot. Rain froze again overnight and hid weld seams beneath glazed crust. A fuel train came heavy before sunrise. Drivers saw nothing strange. Guard car lights swept across track and showed only frost. The engine struck the trap and buckled like thin timber. Fire climbed skyward. Flames lit snow red. Black smoke covered warehouses. Soviet scouts 5 kilometers east saw glow like sunrise. They counted explosions by interval. Each blast meant fewer shells at the front. Each blast meant breath for infantry pinned in trenches. Again the method held. The third team placed theirs near a junction under heavy watch. German sentries walked in pairs. Flood lamps burned white over rail approaches. Dogs barked at any movement. This team crawled under wire and moved like shadow. They planted the trap inches from sight. A single mistake would end them. A medical train passed near midnight. It carried wounded from front hospitals. The claws held but did not bite. Wheels lifted, then settled again. Rails groaned but did not break. The train continued intact. Victor studied this failure and did not hide it. Weight mattered. Speed mattered. Angle of bite mattered most. He adjusted design. He widened teeth. He added 2-degree tilt to force lift earlier. He tested changes on a scrap axle behind the forge. He rolled it over steel and watched it climb. This was the bite he wanted. Not late. Immediate. Certain. He hammered new seams until sparks covered dirt floor. Sound echoed across camp like distant gunfire. Blacksmiths shook wrists and cooled tools in snow. Victor returned to the wreck site to recover parts. He stripped bearings, cut lengths of bent plate, and checked break points with a cold chisel. He took notes. He kept them plain. He told other squads to build only improved model. No one argued. His captain visited again. He brought 2 officers from logistics. They asked if this method could be used deeper behind lines. Victor said yes if scrap found. They asked if portable. He said weight reduced each batch. They asked casualty expectation. He said low for men who place traps at night. The captain wrote orders. He gave Victor authority to train 20 more smiths. Supply of diesel and rod increased. Sparks rose day and night. Men who once doubted now worked under his voice. He directed heat and hammer like he once guided salvage cranes. Progress felt slow but real. April approached. Snow retreated from hills. Wet earth smelled of thaw. Trains moved faster to beat mud season. Traffic doubled. Victor saw chance. He planned coordinated placement across 20 kilometers. Each squad received map grid. They marked install points where slight curves forced load onto outer wheels. Curves made derailment easier. Straight line wrecks required perfect alignment. He chose curves. He chose low embankments to trap wreckage in cuts. He spread traps over 2 nights. He inspected every tooth by hand. He trusted no shortcut. At dawn on April 3rd, a medical train passed first. He held breath and listened. Wheels clacked steady. No break. Good. He did not want wounded dead. He cared for balance more than glory. The second train carried fuel drums. It struck the first trap and threw 6 cars sideways. The third train came minutes later with ammunition. It derailed closer to the fuel wreck. Fireballs rose high. Snow melted in sheets. The fourth train, carrying rations, braked too late and plowed into twisted couplings. Smoke towered above pines. Flames spread across 400 meters of track. Victor watched from ridge with binoculars. His men stayed low. They counted cars and marked explosion intervals. They noted where wheels snapped and where teeth sheared. Data mattered. German response came fast. Armored rail car pushed up from west. Machine gun crews scanned ridges. Mortar rounds tested tree lines. Patrols advanced with dogs and flares. Victor signaled withdrawal. Squads moved along prepared paths. They split into 3 groups to reduce track. Each group left decoys of boot prints to mislead pursuit. Engineers planted wire across ravines to slow advance. Victor moved last. He checked that nobody missing. He heard distant shouts and whistles. He kept pace steady. No panic. By night they reached camp near Birch Grove. Fire burned low. Men spoke little. They understood scale of strike. 4 trains halted. Days of repair needed. Thousands of shells delayed. Dozens of fuel drums lost. Rations burned into black crust. There would be praise from command. There would be anger from enemy. Victor recognized cost. Sabotage always invited retaliation. Patrols would tighten. Guards would shoot without challenge. Minesweepers would probe every drift. He accepted risk. Even so, he planned next moves with calm breath. He met with the captain inside a dugout reinforced with timber. Map lay on table with candles at each corner. Officers traced wreck sites and debated next sectors. Some pushed for deeper strikes. Victor warned that range increased exposure. He recommended lateral attacks on branch lines instead. Cutting feeder rails slowed repairs more than hitting main line again. Officers listened. They did not laugh now. They asked how many traps could be ready in 2 weeks. Victor answered with numbers and times. 10 units possible with full forge work. 15 if scrap abundant. He received approval. He walked back to forge and placed notebook on stool. Sparks jumped from heated rod. He began new build rhythm. Angle. Hammer. Coal. Drill. Fit. Men worked in shifts behind him. They quenched iron in barrels. Fog of steam rose and drifted through camp. Supplies arrived by sled. Diesel cans stacked beside wall. Blacksmiths sharpened chisels. Welders replaced rods. Victor oversaw every seam. One night he paused. He listened to distant trains beyond ridge. Their rumble felt faint. Fewer engines moved this week. Sabotage slowed flow. German artillery fire slackened. Soviet infantry advanced near a crossroads that once saw daily convoys. Men returned with captured rifles and blankets. They told stories of confused enemy lines. One sergeant claimed they found cold camps with no bread. Victor heard but did not smile. Victory remained far. He read old notes. Failures marked with black slash. Success lines circled. He compared angles. He refined spacing again to increase bite delay at low speed. He tested new tooth under forged axle. Result pleased him. Improvement never ended. Even rust taught if one looked close. He walked outside tent. Sky clear. Stars sharp. Air cold enough to tighten lungs. He felt time move like slow hammer swings. Progress measured in degrees and weld lines. Near horizon smoke still hung from early wreck. Germans cut light in dark to hide panic. Victor watched owls rise from trees. Silence felt earned. March turned. Snow retreated. Mud season began. Trains fewer. Guards more. Work continued. August 1943. Heat replaced frost. Grass stood tall along the embankments. Trains moved slower in humidity. Steel expanded and rails groaned under weight. Viktor Kuznetsov watched everything. He counted axles. He tracked times. He studied the soft thud of wheels where ballast held uneven. Every sound mattered now. His traps had spread across front sectors. He spent most days riding between forges and field points. He inspected welds with blunt thumb. He listened to smiths speak of metal fatigue. He answered calm and plain. He no longer worked alone. 3 full detachments now copied his model. They produced claws day and night. They hauled scrap from burnt wagons and abandoned depots. They built teeth from plow blades and bridge bolts. They practiced placement under wet branches and low fog. They treated metal like language. Simple. Precise. Effective. Victor guided them with few words. One morning he received summons from divisional headquarters. Orders written in dry ink. Report to command. Present method. Prepare scale plan. He traveled by truck with 2 traps wrapped in canvas. Roads rough. Dust rose like smoke behind wheels. He reached headquarters after sunset. Guards checked papers. He entered tent where maps covered entire wall. General spoke in low tone. He waited silent. A colonel asked him to step forward. Victor placed metal claws on table. He spoke of bite angle. He explained how wheel flange climbed tooth. How weight forced derail. How chain brace held shape under stress. He did not use flourish. He did not speak long. He described process. One general asked number of wrecks. Victor answered with logs. 25 confirmed. 10 suspected. No explosives used. 5 saboteurs lost in 5 months. Loss rate far lower than mines. They asked if trains could be stopped without full derail. Victor thought. He said 2 teeth only could lift 1 axle. It might stop engine without explosion. Useful for capture. They asked if claws could be planted fast for ambush. He said 3 men could place in 20 minutes if ground soft. They gave him new directive. Create smaller claws for rapid strike. Train new teams. Expand to Belarus sector. Victor left tent with mixed weight in chest. Growth meant reach. Growth meant danger. More men would try this method. More might fall. He walked outside where night pressed warm and close. He looked at stars. He remembered forged sparks. He knew he must refine again. He returned to camp and drew new design. Smaller base. Teeth shorter by hand width. Chain reduced by 2 links. Weight cut by 1/3. He forged prototype with blacksmith under lantern light. Sparks fell on dirt floor. He thick. Sweat on brow. Metal bent slow. When done he tested with spare wheel. Flange climbed tooth. Reduced weight still strong. He nodded once. Next week he traveled with 2 squads to Belarus tree line. Marsh near Baranovichi carried single rail to front. German supply steady here. Victor planned ambush on curve near low ridge. He placed small claws under damp gravel. Rain covered approach. Patrols thinned this sector. He signaled wait. At first light train came heavy with fuel tankers. New traps bit clean. First 2 cars left rail. Not full wreck. Enough to block line. Guards scrambled. Soviet scouts fired from ridge. Quick fight. Short. They seized 2 tankers. Set flares. Pulled back before infantry arrived. Victor counted success. Small claws worked. He kept record plane. 1 train halted. 2 tankers captured. No friendly loss. He moved to next sector. September arrived. Leaves turned dull yellow. Nights cooler again. Victor felt old fatigue return. Hands shook some mornings. Fever took him for a day. He forced rest and shelter. Blacksmiths continued without pause. They mixed sand and quenches to slow cool. Welds held better. News reached them that German engineers now tested rails with rollers pushed ahead of engine. Rollers triggered traps early. Trains stopped before claws. Victor studied countermeasure. He built trap with 2 height levels. First low tooth harmless to roller. Second deeper tooth engaged wheel. He tested at dusk. Will climb second bite. He smiled small. He increased work tempo. Enemy adapted fast. He must stay ahead. He trained apprentices to teach others. He reduced personal travel to limit exposure. Still he visited key lines where risk highest. One night he reached sector near Gomel. Sky clear. Moon bright. Too bright for comfort. He crawled with 2 men to place trap under embankment flank. German foot patrol passed close. Boots crushed dry grass. Men froze flat. Moonlight traced bayonets. Patrol moved on. Trap set just before dawn. They retreated slow. At sunrise supply convoy rolled past. Front wagons cleared trap. Middle cars hit teeth. Metal screamed. 3 cars toppled. Fuel splashed. Fire rose. Victor watched from tree cut. He counted flashes. He noted angle of derail. He adjusted memory for next forge. Retreat hard. Patrols thick. Victor moved last. Bullets snapped bark near ear. He dropped flat. Squad covered. They reached river break and crossed knee deep. Water cold. Mud heavy. But they escaped. Back at camp he rested only 1 hour. Then returned to forge. Improvement never paused. Noise of hammer eased only late nights. In October command expanded operation beyond rail. They wanted bridge collapse plans and track gauge change sabotage. Victor listened but chose focus. His claws were tool for rail. He refused stretch beyond capacity. He told Captain simple. 1 tool mastered better than 10 tools weak. Captain accepted. Then came winter again. Snow fell heavy. Rails silver against white. Victor walked ridge where first wreck lay a year ago. Metal remains under drift. He touched bent steel. Cold through glove. Year of claws. Year of men saved and lost. Year of trains broken like hulls under tide. He wrote new directive in notebook. Short and direct. Do not place near medical trains. Avoid civilian freight when marked clear. War brutal but not blind. Men nodded at rule. In December fog thick. Victor set final traps before year turn. German trains slower. Supplies thin. Soviet advance pushed west. Fuel scarce for enemy armor. Many wreck sites black scars and snow. Victor carried less weight of doubt now. Method proven. But frost returned full. Metal brittle again. Traps needed slow cool. Water froze in barrels. Forge smoke hung low. Men tired. Victor tired. He sat by low fire. Warmth faint. Notebook open. He wrote line plain. Steel and will can shift war. He closed book. January 1944. Night wind moved through torn pines like wire through teeth. Snow lay deep along abandoned embankments. Much had changed in 12 months. German supply lines ran slower. Wrecked engines lay half buried in drifts like rusted bones of animals. Viktor Kuznetsov walked beside one broken wheel and pressed glove against cold steel. He knew each curve, each fracture, each bend from force. A year ago he stood without authority. Now officers sent for him with respect. Yet he felt no triumph. Only steady weight of continued need. War not over. Trains still moved. Men still died. He returned to forge shed. Flames low. Blacksmiths slept. He sat on wooden crate and open notebook. Pages filled with numbers. Derail angles. Weld thickness. Failure notes. Improvement ideas. He read slow. He added line. Ice makes brittle. Heat longer. Cover slow. He closed book and walked out to cold. Stars bright. Frost glittered on rails. Silence wide over front. Next day snow fell heavy. Visibility low. Perfect for work. Victor led 2 squads along hidden track. They carried new claws wrapped in gray cloth. No shine. No clang. Snow-muffled footfall. They reached shallow curve near small station. German sentries far. Wind erased tracks fast. Victor signaled dig. Men pulled shovels through ice crust. They worked knee-deep. Hands shook in cold. Teeth placed. Chains tightened. Snow packed over metal. Tracks appeared untouched. Before dawn they withdrew to forest edge. They crouched behind logs and waited. Victor listened to distant hum. Slow rhythm. Heavy freight. Closer. Ground shook with steady pulse. A long train approached carrying guns on flat cars and ammunition crates stacked high. Wheels cut frost with sharp hiss. Lead engine rolled clean. Middle cars reached trap. Iron screamed. Flanges climbed teeth. 3 flat cars rolled offline. Artillery barrels snapped. Crates burst. White flash followed by shock that knocked snow from branches. Flames spread under wagons. Men shouted in panic. Victor counted seconds. He signaled retreat. Squads crossed frozen stream and vanished into spruce. No losses. One more wreck. One more delay for enemy. But cold harsh. 2 men coughed blood later. Frostbite deep. Victor helped wrap hands. He heated forge slow to thaw leather gloves. Work never paused though pain heavy. In February command recalled Victor to headquarters. His design now printed and distributed across front. He received medal quietly intent with 3 officers. They spoke of innovation, courage, impact on logistics. He nodded once. He placed medal in pocket without ceremony. He asked for more chain and plate. Officers laughed but granted request. He left tent and returned to forge. Sparks still his language. March thaw began. Snow retreated. Rails shone. Enemy moved faster again. Repair crews improved speed. They replaced rails with hardened steel to resist bite. They dragged rollers ahead to test. They placed new sentry posts with search lamps. Danger rose. Victor studied hardened rails. He tapped with hammer. Tone sharper. Harder break. He needed stronger tooth. He tested thicker base plate with double weld. He bent tooth tip to hook instead of lift. Wheel flange caught harder. Risk increased. But war demanded new angle. He spent 3 nights forging new model. Sparks filled shed like fine rain. Sweat froze to collar. He drank from tin mug and returned to hammer. When done he rolled wheel over prototype. A bit deep. Broke flange clean. Good. He wrapped 3 units for field. April saw large convoys push to reinforce West Front. German armor needed fuel. Trains ran day and night. Guards alert. Minesweepers ahead. Victor placed new claws near junction where 2 rails met in V-sharp angle amplified bite. Convoy hit trap before dusk. Engine toppled sideways across both lines. Fire bright. Crashed car blocked junction 3 days. Recon confirmed chaos. Repair teams overwhelmed. Advance slowed. Soviet infantry took ridge nearby. Hard fight but gained ground. Each meter paid in steel and blood. Victor felt cost. May brought more heat. Grass high along cuts. Work harder to hide. Victor trained younger men to lead squads. He felt weight of age though only 32. Scars deep. Sleep short. He spent more time riding and less in field. He documented everything plain. Forge temp. Chain gauge. Tooth angle. Rail hardness shift by season. He wanted method to outlast him. In June he returned to first wreck site. Snow gone. Rails bent like ribs. Rust bright orange in sun. He stood alone with memory of first spark. He traced weld seam with finger. He heard distant roll of thunder. Not guns. Real storm. Wind carried scent of rain and diesel. He pocketed small shard of flange as token. Not trophy. Reminder of work. He walked back to camp. Blacksmiths shaped metal to steady rhythm. Men joked soft. No false cheer. Real unity from shared labor. Victor felt pride sharp then faint. He spoke few words. Heat low. Add air. Hammer angle shallow. Sparks flew bright. Youth watched close. Future hands ready. By late summer German supply lines thinned. Claws used to cross Belarus, Ukraine, Baltic routes. Reports showed dozens of wrecks each month. Some small. Some massive. Method spread beyond Victor's reach. He felt mix of relief and sorrow. More success meant more risk for field squads. He warned captains. Train fewer. Value skill over count. They listened. Autumn returned. Leaves red. Smoke hung in cold air. Victor's health wore thin. Cough deep. Nights long. He worked slower. But mind sharp. He wrote long page marking lessons for next winter. He gave notebook to captain. Not gift. Till one cold night he collapsed outside forge. Men carried him inside. Fever high. He spoke soft. Build lighter base. Shorter quench. 2-degree tilt west rail. Then sleep claimed him. He survived fever after week. Thin but alive. Forge welcomed him back. Hammer slower. But strike true. War rolled westward. Soviet armies crossed Dnieper. Supply lines cut. German retreat uneven. By winter 44 many rails ruined. Claws no longer main weapon but still edge. Victor watched new plans form. Bridges blown. Mines laid. Tanks filled sky with smoke. He stood apart. Work quiet. But known. He walked track one evening with Kane. Snow light. Air clean. Rails cold under glove. He remembered men lost, men saved. Wrecks, sparks, numbers. He breathed steady. No glory. Only purpose. Years later rail cleared. War ended. Victor returned to Murmansk. Shipyard quiet. He picked up hammer again. Not for war. For hulls. For repair. Yet every strike held memory of steel and snow. He kept notebook wrapped in cloth. Lines of numbers and angles. Rust stain on corner. Visitors came sometimes. Young officers asked how claws made. He showed simple. Heat metal. Bend angle. Brace chain. Cool slow. Place careful. Success not magic. Just work. He died old with hands marked by fire. Notebook passed to museum. Display plain. Few words beneath. One line read, a rusted anchor spike idea halted trains, slowed armies, saved lives. No flourish. Just truth.